When round 1 of the 2026 NBA playoffs started, 5 different head coaches were on the unofficial hot seat. By the end of Game 7 of round 2, half of them had quietly become some of the most valuable coaches in basketball. This is a story about job security, about proving people wrong, and in one case about a guy who was supposed to get fired in April and now might coach the same team for a decade. Today, I'm ranking the 5 NBA coaches who just saved their jobs in the 2026 playoffs. Let's get into it. At number 5, Kenny Atkinson of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Atkinson is in his second season as the Cavs head coach. He took over for Bickerstaff after Cleveland's second straight second-round playoff exit. He inherited a team built around Donovan Mitchell, who in 9 NBA seasons had never been past the second round. In round 1, they needed all 7 games to get past the Raptors. They were down 2-2 at one point. In round 2, they faced the Pistons. They lost the first 2 games at home, 111-101 in Game 1 and 107-97 in Game 2. Down 2-0 to the top seed. If you're enjoying the breakdown, hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Then, Atkinson made adjustments. The Cavs won 3 straight to flip the series. They lost Game 6 at home to send it to a Game 7, but in Detroit, they ran the Pistons out of the building. Final score, Cavs 125, Pistons 94. A 31-point blowout to advance. Donovan Mitchell finished with 26 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds. He's now past the second round for the first time in his entire career. After 2 straight second-round exits got Atkinson's predecessor fired, the second-year coach just got Donovan Mitchell to the Eastern Conference Finals. At number 4, Bickerstaff of the Detroit Pistons. Bickerstaff was the guy Atkinson replaced in Cleveland. The Cavs fired him after consecutive second-round exits. The Pistons hired him as their next head coach 2 years ago. What he's done in 2 seasons is a coaching resume moment for the ages. The Pistons went 60-22 this regular season. They were the top seed in the Eastern Conference. Detroit hadn't won a playoff series in 18 years before Bickerstaff arrived. Bickerstaff won the National Basketball Coaches Association Coach of the Year award, the peer-voted award given by his fellow coaches. That's the closest thing to a clean validation by the people who actually know the job. Detroit's playoff run didn't end the way the regular season suggested. They went down 3-1 to the 8-seed Magic in round 1 before becoming the 15th team in NBA history to come back from 3-1. Then they lost Game 7 of round 2 to the Cavaliers in Detroit by 31 points. But the franchise turnaround doesn't get undone by a Game 7 loss. The Pistons hadn't been the East's top seed since 2008. Bickerstaff fixed an entire franchise's culture in 2 seasons. He didn't just save his job. He locked himself in for the rest of the decade. At number 3, Mitch Johnson of the San Antonio Spurs. Johnson took over as interim head coach when Greg Popovich had a stroke during the 2024-25 season. This season is his first full year running the team. The Spurs earned the 2 seed in the Western Conference, their best playoff position in years. In round 1, San Antonio beat Portland 4-1. It was the franchise's first playoff series win since 2017. In round 2, they beat the Wolves 4-2, including a 30-point closeout win in Game 6. First time past the second round since 2017. In Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, the Spurs went into Oklahoma City and beat the defending champion Thunder in double overtime. Victor Wembanyama put up 41 points and 24 rebounds, the second player in Spurs history with 40 points and 20 rebounds in a playoff game. The Thunder bounced back to win Game 2, evening the series. But the moment that mattered for Johnson's job already happened. There was real skepticism about whether anyone could actually replace Popovich, a 5-time champion and the winningest coach in NBA history. That skepticism is gone now. The Spurs are in the Western Conference Finals in Mitch Johnson's first full season. At number 2, Nick Nurse of the Philadelphia 76ers. Nurse was on my hot seat list 4 weeks ago. The Sixers had been down 3-0 in round 1 to the Celtics. Joel Embiid had just had emergency appendectomy surgery. The franchise was a mess. What happened next was historic. Embiid returned to the lineup in Game 4 with the team already down 3-0. The Sixers lost Game 4 anyway, falling to 3-1. Then they won 3 straight elimination games to become the 14th team in NBA history to come back from a 3-1 deficit. Boston had been 32-0 all-time when up 3-1, the most wins without a loss any team in NBA history had ever had. The Sixers had been 0-18 in that situation, the most losses without a win any team had ever had. Both records broke in the same series. Which coach do you think had the biggest job swing? Drop it in the comments. I want to see the disagreement. The Sixers didn't go on to win the title. Round 2 was a wipeout. The Knicks swept them 4-0, including a 39-point Game 1 loss that was the largest playoff opener blowout in Sixers franchise history. And in the middle of the sweep, Daryl Morey was fired as Philadelphia's president of basketball operations. The front office was chaos. Nurse's job is safe anyway. The Round 1 comeback was one of the great coaching jobs in modern playoff history. You don't fire the guy who just engineered the most statistically improbable series win in NBA records. The R2 sweep doesn't erase what happened in Round 1. It just gets footnoted. And at number 1, Mike Brown of the New York Knicks. Mike Brown was the #1 coach on our Video 49 hot seat list. The Knicks had hired him to replace Tom Thibodeau ahead of this season. He was in his first year. There was friction with Karl Anthony Towns reported in the press. The Knicks won 53 games, but the playoff results were the only thing that mattered. Round 1, Knicks beat the Hawks in 6 games. That Game 6 was a 51-point win. They led by 47 at halftime, an NBA playoff record. Round 2, they swept the 76ers 4-0. Game 1 was the 39-point blowout that broke Philly's franchise playoff record. And now in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Cavaliers, Mike Brown is doing things you cannot teach. Game 1, his Knicks were down by 22 points with 7:52 left in the fourth quarter. They went on a 44-11 run to force overtime and win the game. A 22-point comeback in a conference finals opener. Game 2, 2 nights later, the Knicks held the Cavaliers under 40% shooting and under 30% from 3. Josh Hart dropped a playoff career-high 26 points. Brunson had a playoff career-high 14 assists. They won 109-93. The Knicks are now 2-0 in the Eastern Conference Finals. 6 weeks ago, the conversation about Mike Brown was whether the Knicks would fire him in June. 6 weeks later, the conversation is whether he'll coach them for the next decade. Mike Brown didn't just save his job, he turned the entire Knicks franchise's direction around in his first year. 5 coaches. 5 jobs saved in completely different ways. A second-year guy who got Donovan Mitchell past the second round for the first time. A former cast-off who built the East's top seed in 2 years. A former Spurs assistant carrying on the dynasty. A guy who pulled off the most historic comeback in NBA history. And the one coach who was supposed to get fired first now might coach the Knicks for a decade. If you want more breakdowns as the conference finals continue, subscribe to Rim Logic. New videos every Monday and Friday. Appreciate you watching. I'll catch you next time.